Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we will talk about fairies. Are they little magical creatures with beautiful wings? Or are they elf-like creatures of forests and magic? Are they friendly or evil? Do they fly or hide in the dark? Let's figure it out. We call a magic story a fairy tale, literally, a story of fairies. In Celtic mythology, the fairies are a collective name for supernatural beings. All magical creatures found in legends fall under this general definition. Elves, goblins, leprechauns, and banshees, even dragons. The name fairy folk or fairies has been used in many European cultures. This was the name of supernatural beings or spirits. Sometimes they are close to humans and are quite friendly, and sometimes their stories are much darker. In Scotland, fairies are divided into two groups, which are now widely used in other countries. They are the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court. At the Seelie or Summer Court are fairies who are willing to live in peace with humans. They are seen as the most beautiful and brightest of the fairies. Despite their resentment and vindictiveness, they are ready to help, turn to humans for help themselves, and then generously thank them. These fairies are usually associated with the bright light of spring and summer. The Winter Unseelie Court is much darker. These creatures are ugly and not friendly. They prefer to walk in the dark. They dabble in dark magic and harm humans just to entertain themselves. They also often steal human children since the fairies themselves cannot procreate. All fairies are distinguished by unearthly beauty, but this beauty is deceptive, often combined with some physical defect or unusual feature. Fairies can always be distinguished from humans, and there will always be something alien in their appearance, both attractive and repulsive. Fairy folk live next to humans, but at the same time, in their own parallel world. In this fairyland, time and space are different from our usual ones. There is no passage of time, no diseases, no aging, and no death. Fairies devote their days to entertainment and celebrations. They hunt, sing, and dance. Sometimes they show themselves to humans for fun. The magic folk rarely interfered in humans' affairs, considering them too small and uninteresting. Fairies helped or took revenge on men only when they were in their way. Fairies cannot be called good or evil. Rather, fairies as otherworldly beings do not think about the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, just for fun, they deceive and enjoy the chaos and disorder they created in the lives of mortals. For example, the classic character from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, the forest spirit, Puck. In the worst case, fairies are magical serial killers, otherworldly monsters who kidnap and torture humans for fun, simply not realizing that it is immoral to do so. Therefore, humans preferred not to deal with fairies or even drive them away. Fairies have a different idea of truth and lies. They cannot lie directly, and any promise they make, they are obliged to fulfill. But they will fulfill any promise literally, abusing any loopholes. So, fairy is a common name for all sorts of magical creatures living somewhere near humans. These are leprechauns and banshees, brownies and goblins. But there is one particular creature interesting to us: the pixies. They are the prototypes of those winged fairies that we know today. Pixies are mischievous and funny fairies who live near humans. They are notable for their bright red hair and green clothes. Most pixies live near water, under large rocks or in the moss. For the most part, they are harmless. Both in height and behavior, they are similar to children, playful and mischievous. They love children and do not harm them intentionally. They love to play and even fulfill their wishes. But as it often happens, pixies can play too much and cause harm to a child. These little creatures will later become models for modern fairies. For example, Tinker Bell from Peter Pan is called both a fairy and a pixie. These words are used as synonyms. There is a widespread belief that fairies were once pagan deities. The Christian story goes that during the rebellion in heaven, God ordered the gates of paradise to be closed. Those who were inside remained angels. Those who were in hell became demons, and those caught between them became fairies. Eventually, by the 17th century, the church began to view all the magical folk as demons. Stories about fairies began to be associated with witchcraft. Fairies began to appear in medieval romantic literature, mainly as creatures encountered by knights-on-errant. In many works of fiction, fairies appeared side by side with nymphs and satyrs. In the 15th century, the classic legend about King Arthur featured the fairy sorceress Morrigan. 4 fairies took wounded Arthur to the magical land of Avalon, where he rests and will one day return to our world. The modern image of fairies was formed in the literature and paintings of the Victorian era. In the 19th century, many writers were inspired by folklore and fairy tales. Romanticism flourishes in the visual arts, paintings on mythological and fairy tale subjects. Fairies become beautiful and seductive, the other side of the constrained Victorian era. The art depicts all fairies in frivolous, transparent robes, or without them. Another explanation for the popularity of fairies at this time is the widespread use of opium-based medicines, which caused fantastic hallucinations. For some artists, paintings with fairies are an opportunity to show their erotic fantasies and drug-filled dreams. Flower fairies owe much of their popularity to a series of books by the British artist and poet Cicely Mary Barker, published in the first half of the 20th century. She drew little winged creatures fluttering over flowers. The main feature of her work was accuracy and attention to detail. The image of flowers corresponds to all the subtleties of botany. Barker's fairy wings resemble the wings of insects, dragonflies, butterflies, bees, and moths, and are often combined with a certain flower. For example, a willow fairy with wings like a dragonfly that plays with the water of a pond. Her wings resemble elongated tree leaves. Queen Mary, wife of George V and grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II, was a fan of these works. Thanks to the popularity of these paintings, this image of a fairy became dominant. And in 1911, the most famous fairy-related book was published, Peter Pan. The novel tells us about a boy who did not want to grow up and ran away to a magical never-never land to be friends with fairies. Peter Pan's friend and assistant, the fairy Tinker Bell, has become a pop culture icon. In the beginning of the century, many people in England wanted miracles and magic. With industrialization, the technical revolution, and threat of the Great War, people craved for something natural, mystical, something of fairy tales. Stories about fairies, world harmony, and the unity of man and nature were opposed to soulless industrial progress. In modern times, the old fairy tales have been replaced by stories about aliens. In both cases, we have beings who are inexpressible and do not understand humanity, who kidnap randomly selected humans, play with them and bring them back so that people cannot understand what happened to them, and sometimes acquire strange abilities. However, magical folks, fairies, and elves remain almost obligatory elements of any fantasy tale of high of dark stories. We see them in art, books, games, and popular culture. How do they see us? Thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe if you like tales about magical creatures.